Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is draw lines about 3/8 of an inch in from the edge. I do this so my tape lines up and I have a symmetrical picture. There's a little problem with it because of these decal edges that occur. On mold-made paper you have 2 decal edges. On handmade paper you have 4. That's part of the reason why I say you probably don't want to stretch handmade paper. That and the fact that depending on how it's made, if you let it soak too long, it's going to turn to mush on you. Okay, and one other thing. A lot of papers have a marking down here or somewhere on the paper. Make sure you get that oriented right. Now, when I do this, of course I use the ruler. I use the T-square because of those decal edges, so I can get a straight line across there. This is the only time I use a graphite pencil on my paintings. Long ago, I quit using graphite on my paintings, and I threw away all my erasers, and I only use a kneaded eraser now. Now, what I use is a watercolor pencil. Typically raw sienna because it doesn't stain, and if I draw on the paper, I draw with raw sienna, and if I make a mistake, it's real easy. I just put water on it and dab it out with a paper towel. Okay, I'm going to go draw on this now. Okay, I've got the lines drawn on here. Now I'm ready to start soaking it. See, I come in about 3/8 of an inch. They're all nice and symmetrical. Okay, we're going to drop this in here. And what I'm going to do is let it soak for about, I guess, around 4 minutes. You'll learn over time how much you need to do it for. But remember, this is the top side here. And I'll leave it soak, and then I'll turn it over and let it soak for another 3 or 4 minutes. Sunday night at 7 on WJCT presents Radio Theater. Okay, I've finished soaking now. Now, from this point on out, we're going to have to move rather quickly. Now, notice the paper's a lot softer. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to line it up with these lines I had previously drawn on there. Notice it's a lot larger than it was when I first put it in there. This paper has expanded a considerable amount. And we have to work sort of expeditiously once we get started on this, depending on the humidity that we have here. And the reason why we have to line it up correctly is so when we paint, it's even on the board. This is not an easy process here. Okay. This paper is very soft and it's very difficult to deal with. I soaked it for about 8 minutes. So it's very large right now. It's larger than it normally would be. And as you can see, it's hard to move around sometimes. Okay, I got it now. And now this is where the sponge comes in. What we do is we flatten this thing out. Get rid of any particulates underneath there. Get it out again. Bring out the sponge. Flatten it out again. Okay, now I previously have cut the tape earlier. Starting to dry out pretty quickly. Okay, I previously cut these. I'm going to start applying them along the lines I had previously drawn. Okay, and once I get that done, we'll come right back. Now, while I'm applying this tape, I'm still stretching this thing out a little bit. I apply a little bit of moisture to the tape, not a lot, because this tape and the paper is already wet. So I'll go ahead and complete and keep spreading this thing out and keep applying the tape. Now, one other thing I forgot to show you. I use this, I put a small bead down along, just a very small bead, along the very outer edge of this paper. Remember what I told you about the subsequent watercolor coming in and doing. And then I take a piece of paper towel and I wipe it off this direction. Then I continue applying my brown paper tape. Okay, I got the tape on now. I'm going to rub it down. I'm out into my paper a little bit. I'm going to get this thing stuck down as much as I can, because we're going to have a lot of force on this paper later. Okay. Now come what really matters, okay? We're going to start stapling this thing down. And when I do, I start at the center of each one and work out. Now, you do this because later, when you're painting, the glue in here is probably going to come loose or can come loose. If you did it right, it won't come loose. But you got to keep pressing everything down because this paper's drying right now. So I'll come back after I've had this thing stapled down. Okay, I've finished stapling this and tying it down, and I fold it over the edges, gives a little extra support. You can see I put the staples in about once every inch or so. And a word about how you orient this wet paper when it's beginning to stretch. Now it's going to occur through the processes. It's going to start pulling on those staplers, and that tape is going to get very taut. You need to leave it lie flat. If you orient it in a vertical position or any other position, all the moisture is going to flow to the downside. This way the moisture is more or less uniform throughout the processes. Another word, some people are so anxious to start painting, they'll break out the hair dryer and start drying this thing. If you got a large enough piece of paper, what's going to occur is that you're going to dry it in spots. I mean, one spot's going to dry before the other spot is going to pull on it, and you're probably not going to like the results once you start painting, because it'll probably start buckling and everything. Look, the processes of stretching paper at the very best are still iffy. You know, this tape here and all this does is try to minimize the buckling of your paper and stuff. You know, I look at stretching paper much as I do the same as matting paper. When I get finished with a picture, I take it down and get it matted. If I could take it down and get it stretched, I'd probably do that also. Okay, best of luck. And it's a lot of work. You got to practice. And I'm going to use this paper later. I already have a picture planned for it, so and I'll probably tell you about it later also. Thanks. Now the next thing I'm going to speak to you about is about washes, and that's important in watercolors. It's how to do washes and what to do with washes.